Hello friends, we'll be learning another illustration related to the inventory valuation. Let's figure out what different do we have in this specific illustration. Now when we speak about inventory valuation, there are certain methods, certain identities that we need to figure out. Now in this illustration, we'll be figuring out FIFO, LIFO and simple average method. So let's figure out what exactly the illustration talks about. The illustration is about Adnan Nadeem Limited, or rather Adnan Nadeem Industrial Limited. The following amount, or rather the following information about imports has been mentioned here. This is for the month of October 2016. He has imported, or rather he has purchased certain electronical components. So let's figure out what do we have here. The opening inventory has been mentioned. It was at 150 units. That means opening balance of stock was 150 units. Per unit cost was 32 rupees. That was the cost mentioned. Now in the month of October he has done certain purchase. The first purchase was on 5th of October, which was for 200 units. Again the per unit cost was 32 rupees here. On 17th of October he made another purchase of 450 units. The per unit cost was 31. Now on 28th of October there was another purchase done. That was for 100 units. And the per unit cost is 33. So in total we have figured out how many quantities has been purchased. What is the rate of per quantity purchased here? Now let's figure out what is the requirement. At the end of October they figured out 220 components remained in the inventory. That means 220 units of stock was still with the inventory here. It never went out, nothing happened to it. That is the closing stock that we have. Now the first requirement here is if FIFO method is used, what is the cost of goods sold in October? That is the first requirement. Second requirement here is again if FIFO method is used, what is the value of the ending inventory? That means closing stock value. The third requirement here is find out the value of closing inventory if average cost method is used. That means simple average cost method is used here. Then we have to figure out the value of closing inventory. So let's start with the requirements first. Let's start with the working first. Now when we're talking about the working, we'll be starting with the requirement A, that is FIFO method. Cost of goods sold is supposed to be figured out. That means how many quantities of goods sold and what is the value of that. So we have mentioned the date, we have mentioned the quantity, we have mentioned the rate of that quantity, we have mentioned the amount column. Let's mention the date first. So we have the opening balance, we have 5th October, we have 17th October and we have 28th October. Now we'll mention the corresponding units. So we have mentioned the corresponding rate, we have mentioned the corresponding amount as well. Now if they're asking 220 units are left with us, let's figure out how much is the total units that we have in the first place. So we have a total of 900 units with us. Now we need to figure out, if we have 900 units, 220 units are still with us. That means how much has been sold out. So basically 680 units were sold out. Now this 680 will be bifurcated as per the FIFO method. That means the first in quantity will be taken out first. So whatever balance is left after that, that will be adjusted in the second in quantity, then third in quantity, and accordingly it will go on until we fulfill 680 number. So out of 680, first we'll take off 150 quantity because that is first day. That means opening balance that we had will utilize here first. So 150 has been utilized. After that, we'll utilize the other 200 because we know 200 plus 150 will give you a total of 350 itself, which is still less than 680. Now in the third lot, that means on 17th of October, we had got 450 imports. We are not supposed to use the entire 450 input right now. Only the balance out of 680 minus 350 that we have already utilized, the balance will be utilized out of 450. So let's figure out how much is the balance here. So the balance is 330 units. That means out of 450 units that we purchased, we'll be utilizing only 330 units. Rest everything will be stayed with us, or rather it will be a part of inventory itself. That means closing stock. So now we'll make the corresponding units, or rather corresponding entries towards the quantity that we have figured out and the amount per quantity. We have mentioned the corresponding amount also in green there. Let's figure out what is the amount and we'll mention that in red. So we've mentioned all the amounts here. Now we'll do a total of it. That means as per the requirement A, the quantity, or rather the cost of goods that has been sold out, that means total of 680 units being sold out, that quantity or the value of that quantity is 21,430 rupees. So we have figured out the requirement A. Now let's figure out the value, or rather the requirement B. Now the requirement B asked for the FIFO method itself, but now it is asking the value of the closing stock. That means closing stock 220 units that we have with us, the value of that is supposed to be figured out. So we've done a small calculation for you. We need to figure out, as per the FIFO method, what is the value of the closing stock. Units of the closing stock is 220 units. Now cost of goods sold, that means how many goods have been already sold. We already know that 680 units have been already sold out. That means 150 units earlier were used first, so that won't be utilized. 200 units from the second lots were also utilized. Now the third lot was for 450 units, out of which 330 units have been utilized and rest 120 are still pending to be utilized. That means that is a part of closing stock. And the last lot of 100 units was still not utilized, so that is again a part of closing stock. So 220 units can be further segregated as 120 units from the 450 lot at the rate of 31 per unit, and the last lot of 100 units at the rate of 33 per unit. Now we multiply and figure out the amount here, and that is the value of the closing stock. So 3720 and 3300. If we add that, we get a total value of 7020 here. Now this 7020 is the value of closing stock 220 units only as per FIFO method. So requirement B has been also fulfilled. Now we'll go on to the requirement C, which talks about the 220 units itself, that is the closing stock, but at simple average price. So how to calculate that? Let's figure it out. Now when it comes to simple average method, you have the units, you don't have to worry about it. You just have to take a weighted average price first, or rather the average price first. Now how to calculate the average price is the addition of all the prices divided by the number of prices. So that will give you the average price ideally. Now addition of all the prices, that means we had the price as 33, 32, 31, 32. You add them and then divided by 4, because we have only 4 prices for our reference. So now addition of all prices, we need to prepare a format. Let's prepare a format first and then figure out what is the average rate, or rather average price here. Now we have the average price, or rather we have all the amounts mentioned here. The total of all quantity is 900 units, and the average amount, or rather the total of all amounts of figures to 28,450. Now to determine the average price, this price will be divided by the total quantity that we have, which will give you an average price of 31.61. If you divide it by the actual formula itself, that means all the prices added together divided by the total number of prices, you will still get a value of 32. If you round this off, we have got the nearest digit, that means 31.61. If you round it off, it will be 32 itself. So that is the same price that you'll have. Now when we figure out the actual cost of inventory, now here with the average price, now we'll be able to figure out this thing. So again, the answer that we have figured out is 6954.44. So this is how the weighted, or rather not the weighted average cost though, but the simple average cost method is utilized to figure out the value of the closing stock whenever we have to figure out as per the FIFO, LIFO and this specific method. Had it been weighted average method, the calculation would have completely changed. This thing can be also done using all the prices, that means 33 plus 32 plus 32 plus 31 divided by 4, you will get 32 as the average price. That multiplied by 220, you will get a rounded off number and not a decimal one number. Still everything remains the same. This can be also used, the other method can be also used. Either of it can be used to figure out the requirement C. So this is how the problem is supposed to be solved. I hope this illustration gave you a more clarity about the simple average method. Basically just like we spoke about, that we'll be solving certain items or certain illustrations related to it. So this is all for the video. Thank you for watching this video. Stay tuned with Ekeeda and keep subscribing to Ekeeda.